Good evening and welcome to Quincy Access Television's live coverage of Quincy Votes 2021. I'm Joe Catalano, joined again by my colleague Mark Crosby here to bring you live election results throughout the evening here in the city of Quincy. Mark, good to be back at the Anchor election desk with you.
Absolutely. Glad to be here with you.
Absolutely.
And we will have a parade of guests here this evening, candidates that have stopped by and some that aren't on the ballot. And that would be our first guest. He, of course, is the mayor of the city of Quincy, Mayor Thomas Koch. Mayor Koch, welcome.
Good to be here.
Thanks
It's good
for coming over,
to not be on the ballot.
Yes. A whole different perspective, right?
It is indeed.
Well, you're in the middle of your term right now, and
That's right.
has there been any determination as to a next term for you?
No.
Okay.
As I always say, take them one at a time. So
All
I
right.
still got quite a ways to go in this term.
As you were out and about today, a beautiful day for voters. I don't know what the final results would be as far as the numbers that have come out to vote. About 16% was predicted by the city clerk.
Yeah, Nikki Crispo, and by the way, congratulations to Nikki, Joe Newton, the entire team. They just do great work. You know, you see problems in different communities. They always nail it. They got good people. They're on top of everything. So congratulations to them. Yeah, I got a report at 6 o'clock that 14.7% had turned out. So it's trending to that 16, maybe hit 17%, which is too bad in one way because it was a beautiful day. You want to see a great turnout, particularly when you have so many candidates that are working so hard, you know, whether they're knocking doors, holding coffee hours, or maybe to try to get their message out, and certainly to engage the voter. It gets harder and harder these days to really engage the voter.
Yeah, and to the point, too, about Nikki and her team, they have to prepare as if it's going to be 100% turnout every time.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Imagine if they got cut short on ballots, right?
Exactly.
And they've been short on help. I mean, there's a lot of the elderly folks who are reluctant to work the elections with the COVID issue and so forth. So they've had some challenges getting the right manpower to all the precincts.
Absolutely. Do you think there is a place for mail-in early voting in the future?
That's a good question. I mean, there's pros and cons. I'm old-fashioned in some ways, and I enjoy getting out, saying hello to the election workers, and casting that ballot right in the box there. It just feels good. And by the way, it's convenient. Hours of 7 in the morning, 8 at night. And by the way, you can vote early if you can't make it on election day. So I think we made a lot of accommodations for people. How far do we go? You know, so and that stuff does cost money. You know.
Sure.
Looking at some up-and-coming events here in the city of Quincy. Of course, the General's Bridge, the ceremony was held was about a month and a half back.
September
thereabouts.
11th, yeah.
So where does that road stand as far as that bridge being usable, being opened?
It's probably within 10 days being finally open.
Oh, that
All
is
the
Just
work
a big cheer out from the middle of the city.
Yeah, right. Now they understand what it is,
Yes.
driving by it all the time. But all the work on Bergen Parkway, the bridge is done. It's the Bergen Parkway piece now that's being finished up. So it should be about 10 days or so, and maybe we'll have a ceremonial drive over if we can get one of the generals to come back.
Very good. Can we talk a bit about the pandemic relief money that's coming into the city, Mayor, and what it's been used for so far and what you hope to use it for in the future?
Sure. Well, as you know, there's been different phases. The
Yep.
the first COVID wave of money, if you will, was direct COVID, and we spent a lot of money in our schools, ventilation, computers, Chromebooks, technology issues, obviously masks, PPE, every way we could think of that to keep the schools safe for our kids and us teachers and staff. And then, of course, the next phase with the ARPA monies, which is more to help with recovery, we've used it to do a number of things, but some of the big pieces is the purchase and addition of land under the ARPA money in consultation with both senators and Congressman Lynch. We've been following the guidelines to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do. The one thing that Congressman Lynch says he never worries about the city of Quincy is that the money's put to good use, that it's not sitting in the bank. It's supposed to be on the street, help the economy, and help with some of the challenges we have. So, as you know, we've purchased some property, including the Monroe Building by City Hall. We purchased the marina on Southern Artery. So those are very important parcels, and I think will be very meaningful down the road and meet the criteria for the ARPA money. So it comes in tranches. So it can be used over the next couple of years. There's also ESSER money, which is money that goes directly to the schools, and we will work with the school committee on those dollars to make sure we continue to provide the best learning environment we can under the conditions with the challenges that we've all faced. I think everybody's sick of COVID, everybody's sick of masks, tired of hearing about, but it's here, and I think it's here to stay, much like the flu. We're just going to have to learn to live with it,
You had mentioned the parcel of land actually that was purchased. It was purchased in the thought that this is down the Southern Artery. This is down by the Tide Mill,
Right.
in hopes that maybe the Quincy Recreation Department would utilize that.
Well, first of all, it's waterfront. It's got a Chapter 91 license. So the rowing program that we were talking about, the boating programs we were talking about, we can drop right in there with the recreational use without any special permits going to the state because it's already existing use. So that's perfect. It abuts the Southern Tide Mill, which we own, and it's a beautiful piece of open space along Town River. Looks across the Broad Meadows. It's gorgeous. I mean, you drive Southern Artery, unless you drove down there, you'd never know what a gem it is back there. And quite frankly, if we didn't do it, you'd probably see another clip or another cove, tall condominium building with private boat slips. I think we have enough of that. We need more public access to the water, a city waterfront, and this is going to be, I think, a great recreational use and gem going down the road.
Who's Grand Marshal at the Christmas parade this year, Mayor?
I don't know if they picked anybody yet. Are you interested, Joe?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's a good question, but it's coming up fast.
It is indeed.
It's coming up fast.
We hope to see you there too.
Definitely. And let me just congratulate to all the candidates tonight. I don't know that people understand. There's a lot of people that are great on the sidelines tossing bombs, but to put your name forward, to go out and work hard, talk about issues, learn about issues, listen to people, and give up that kind of time in your family, in your life, to go out and do it, I think it's remarkable. So I want to congratulate all the candidates on the ballot today. I look forward to working with those that were chosen by the voters, and it's a great city, it's a great community, and one of the reasons it's a great community is the involvement of our citizenry. Continues to be an active community. We got almost 200 people serving on boards and commissions, volunteer basis. Pretty remarkable.
Appreciate your time as always, Mayor.
My
Thanks
pleasure,
for being
guys. Good luck tonight.
Thank you.
Shouldn't be a late night.
No, we don't think so either. We have numbers coming in already, actually, that we're going to get to in just a bit, but thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just joining us, you're watching Quincy Access Television's live coverage of Quincy Votes 2021, the municipal election. There are, of course, races tonight for 3 school committee seats, the 3 at-large city council seats, and also the ward council seats in wards 1, 2, and 5. We've invited all the candidates to come in this evening and chat with us, and they are doing so in great numbers, Mark. So we're really looking forward to talking to them throughout the evening.
Certainly, and we should also mention that the staff here at Quincy Access Television working hard, of course, under the direction of Jonathan Caleri, and our members, our volunteers that are at each and every polling location.
That's right. There's no central tabulation at City Hall tonight. Everything's happening at the polls, and we have people at the polls to bring you the numbers, and we'll be doing that throughout the evening.
Well, Ward 3 Councilor Ian Kane, excuse me there.
It's okay, my parents do that all the time.
I don't think I've ever called you by the
name tag
wrong
next
name.
Yeah. I always joke my parents couldn't afford more than 4 letters, so they named us all 4 or under.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, Ian, Aaron, and Liam.
Well, I
So.
almost gave you a new
Yeah.
name. Thanks. Ward 3, of course, wasn't contested. The race wasn't contested in your ward.
It was not this year. No, it was not. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to serve again if the votes come through, of course. I don't take this for granted that I didn't have an opponent, so I hope that means that I'm doing an okay job for the residents of Ward 3.
How many years now, Ian? What term is this for you?
So this is my 3rd term, so I'm in year 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So
Time flies.
Is it what you thought it would be?
I don't know what I thought it would
Yeah.
be. I guess that would be the answer to the first question. But I think it's been a lot more. I think what I've discovered over the past 5 to 6 years is that there's pretty strong power in a municipality. I think most often people are so focused on what's going on TV and what's on Facebook and following national elections and federal campaigns, but missing the point that there's plenty to do locally where you live, and obviously you pay your taxes here for the home that you live in, which is your primary asset most often, but there's plenty you can do to create value for residents and neighbors and family and friends at the local level, which has been a rewarding part of the experience.
Can you give us an update on something that you were pushing, and that was municipal broadband?
Sure, yeah. So, God, we're going a little over 3 years now when we first proposed the concept, and the mayor, who obviously was just here, has been very supportive of the project over that period of time. I've been working very closely with his team, Chris Walker, his chief of staff, in moving this forward. And back in, God, we're at the end, we're in November now. So back in April, there was a request for proposals put out for solicitations for the design of a citywide fiber optic network. And so there were about 5 submissions that came in. The selection of that group was just made by an internal group, and hopefully we'll be making an announcement about that soon. So we can get things rolling. And I think there's still a couple of steps to be made. The city needs to form a municipal light plant that would manage the operation of the municipal broadband system for the city. And so that's a 2-step process that will probably take about a year. And I think we're still looking at whether we're going to do it in a phased approach throughout the city or if we're going to do it on a total citywide basis. Exciting times for sure. This has been certainly a baby of mine that I'm looking forward to carrying over the line. And I'm hoping that we can see at least, I would say, a shovel on the ground, but it's mostly going to be aerial wires. So at least some wires connecting to poles within a year, I hope.
Curious, part of the federal pandemic relief funds were to expand internet access mostly to underserved areas. Can the city maybe tap into some of those resources for this project?
Certainly looking at options. You know, I think the city has been in a fortunate financial position that it could withstand, and the project ends up being financed on the subscriptions of the residents of the city. And so
ultimately,
yeah, ultimately,
yeah.
right. So, but luckily the city's in a financial standpoint that it can afford to do a project like this. About 3 or 4 months ago, I joined a group of people from around the country that we had a chance to speak with the National Economic Council, the White House, to talk about these issues because at the time, when the infrastructure bill was being discussed, there was obviously some money that was going to be put in there, but there were certain restrictions that the Treasury were putting into particular language around how those funds could be deployed. And so, I think we take for granted, obviously, that we're in a good position, but there are places like LA County, rural areas in Michigan and Wisconsin, other big urban areas that couldn't afford to do projects like this to give connectivity and really bridge that digital divide for people. And so part of the stuff in the infrastructure bill is still being, I think, sought out.
Okay.
But at least we'd still be in a position to do it because basically the incumbents or the large cable companies try to provide at least like the minimum threshold to allow people to develop under the guidance that's being provided. So basically, if there's a certain amount of broadband capacity that's already being provided, that federal funds wouldn't be able to be, applied.
Okay.
So, either way, I hope we obviously get through this project, but it would be nice, of course, if we can tap into some of those federal funds.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was a North Quincy electric project that has that been completed at this point?
Yes, at least, I think most of it. We had, there was a big trunk from one side of the city to the next, but the last update I have on that is that we're good on that front, yeah.
And what did that involve?
It was replacing a backbone. I guess that was a sort of an infrastructure cable that went from like Southern Artery all the way up Newport Ave to North Quincy substation over by the North Quincy T station. So it was a big project, but it was good to have those infrastructure upgrades done. We had gone through some serious periods in Ward 3 where there were a bunch of blackouts on a rolling basis, which made me feel like we were living in a third world country. But that's because, again, we've got big companies who own the infrastructure and it takes them to replace it. So thank goodness National Grid was on this one to take care of it, at least to set the backbone for what we need.
All right.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Ian.
Yeah, good to see you too. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure.
You got his name right. And of course I know.
Yeah, Ian Kane. Yeah.
Ian, thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks, Ian. Ward 3 Councilor Ian Kane here on our live coverage of Quincy Votes 2021, the municipal election. And we have some numbers that'll be filtering in here shortly, but we also have guests, Mark, filtering in throughout the evening as well.
Absolutely. And I'll try to be better with everyone's name, including my own. Sometimes I forget my own name. Well, joining us, just about to take the seat, is one of those contested race candidates. He's a candidate for re-election for the Quincy School Committee. That is Doug Gutrow. Doug, welcome.
Good to be back.
Good to
Welcome
have you
back, yes.
Thank you. Good to see you both.
How was that out on the campaign trail today?
It was a busy day.
Was it?
It was a busy day, yeah. Crack of dawn, just like every other candidate out there. I spent a lot of time in my ward, Ward 5, my home ward, because I was a ward councilor there for 10 years. And then just traveled to other polling locations throughout the day. So it was a beautiful day, good weather, good time, a lot of energy. I don't know that the turnout was where we want it, but grateful to the voters that came out.
Talk about, I know one of your objectives is to get the students back to the classroom. They are in the classroom now,
we
but
are.
get them back to the same level that they were at. Certainly the pandemic has
Yeah.
caused disruptions.
Yeah, learning loss, social emotional well-being. I'm sure you're going to hear many of the school committee candidates talk about that. Big deal. Some of the assessment data came in, and no shock that there is learning loss. I can see it in my own son. And
Yep.
some of the issues.
Saw it in mine as well.
Did you? Yeah. But I also see mentally, emotionally, and socially how valuable it is to get them back in the classroom and re-engage and reignite. So, I think QPS has a lot of plans to do things to help both in class as well as supplementary programs that are going to help students, whether it's after school or tutoring or whatever the case may be. It depends on the individual need of the students. So we have work to do, but it's not a Quincy issue. It's not a Massachusetts issue, national, global issue. In terms of that. So.
Sure. Talking about the pandemic and the post-pandemic now, really, do you think that in the future there'll be lessons learned that we could use to a positive event in the future?
I think we did learn a lot. I learned, first of all, how resilient our kids are and how amazing our teachers are. And QPS, really, Quincy Public Schools family in terms of what they did over the course of the pandemic. One of the things that I asked to be put together, and Aaron Perkins and the superintendent did, were COVID keepers, and we have a number of things that we've learned over the course of the pandemic that will be invaluable and that we will keep and we will utilize going forward. I mean, one of the assets is that we've got Chromebooks for many of the students that we have. We've got more incoming for the elementary school students, which are a valuable asset. The teachers will tell you that the fact that the students have those in hand is valuable. I think some of the remote parent-teacher conference options that took place, even now, some were in person, some were virtual, and obviously the attendance that happened on some of the virtual meetings is higher than it would be if you physically go to a school. So there are things that we can learn and we should keep.
Anti-bullying.
Yeah, bullying is a big issue. One of the things that when I got on the school committee was digital literacy was important to me. I had two boys that literally got into high school without taking a required typing class. So we, over the course of the last 4 years, many people were in the process, and we put together a digital literacy curriculum to deal with that. And there are a whole host of different things, but that are part of it in terms of teaching younger kids not just how to keyboard, which we do at second grade, but how to navigate the internet, how to use social media, how to be respectful. But with the advent of social media, you see that there's a lot more bullying out there. And just our ability as a school system to kind of track it, to nip it in the bud, to understand it, it's something that didn't happen when we were kids, And so it's a whole new sophisticated way of kind of tracking it down and seeing where it is and holding the students accountable. We saw all of that with some of the posts that came out over the course of the pandemic on Instagram. Just the power of social media and what it can do. And on the bullying side, it's a real negative effect. So even though you're physically not in school to bully a child, you can still bully a child, intimidate them, and it can have ramifications.
Well, I think years ago it used to end at the schoolyard. Now it doesn't because of the
100%.
digital component.
No question about it. And it can linger beyond that. It can linger at nights and weekends, and there can be group chats. There are a whole host of different things that are insidious that you don't necessarily track or monitor, and sometimes the child doesn't want to say that they're the victim of that. So, and the parent can't always see it. Sometimes when it happens in the schoolyard, it's a different story. So, but I'm a big supporter of stepping up that, being more vigilant on that. I'm not sure I know all the technological tools to do that, but we've got to keep our eye out and work with guidance and the teachers to see what that is, and the parents have to help report that too.
Thanks for coming in tonight, Doug. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having this every election night. It's always a pleasure and a privilege to be here.
Great to see you.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Tom.
You're welcome. It's School Committee member Doug Gutrow here on our live coverage of Quincy Votes 2021. Thanks for joining us this evening, and thanks to our crew here in studio, our volunteers out at the polls as well. We'll be funneling in numbers for you to let you know how the results are coming in. As you heard the mayor say earlier, about a 16% turnout is what's expected this evening. It looks like that's going to hold true, Mark.
Looks that way, and once again, we do have some preliminary numbers. I don't know that they're being shown quite yet, but they will be soon, and you and I will read those numbers as well.
Absolutely.
And I just heard that we're almost to that point. But joining us right now, Joe, we have another guest.
We do. We have another Joe.
Joe.
Ward 1 City Council candidate Joe Murphy.
Hi guys. Good to see you.
Thanks
see
for
you
coming in,
too.
Joe.
Thank you.
Third time the charm?
Third time, maybe. We'll see.
Yeah.
Probably not quite the charm, but we're heading towards charming.
Okay.
So
Okay. What did you find out on the campaign trail from the preliminary till now that was different than the last time you ran?
well, the tone is feeling different out there. There's a lot of frustration, and so I listened to a lot of people talk about how they want to hear back more from the administration and from the counselor, and how they're just not happy with some of the direction of the spending. Like for instance, some of them, even though this isn't like a Ward 1 specific issue, are concerned about how COVID money is spent.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at a PTO meeting, and throughout the winter, at Atherton Howe, and I think a lot of schools around the city, they're going to have to keep the windows cracked for ventilation during this pandemic. And so the kids are probably going to have to end up with like jackets and hats on. Well, the COVID money could have been spent on air cleaners for those classrooms, leaving the kids to be in a more comfortable situation. That's what they want to see that kind of money spent on, not some of the stuff that's being chosen. So there's just a lot of frustration out there.
Also, I know one of the concerns is the hospital and not having a medical facility in the city.
Yeah, I mean, that again is not a Ward 1 issue, but there's a lot of people that can't believe that, we are the largest city in Massachusetts without a hospital. We no longer have emergency care. If you get hurt in Quincy, you're going to have to, you're going to be taken somewhere else, some city. No one's born in Quincy anymore. Isn't that weird? Like this historic city, unless it's an emergency situation, no one is born here. And for a town that's so like proud of who's from here, that's weird to me.
So what are some Ward 1 issues, Joe, that you think are pressing?
Well, I mean, the ongoing projects they're worried about. The construction seems to take longer than they feel it should. But the hot button issue right now is 105 C Street, which is the home, was traditionally for the last 50 years, I think, home of the Imperial Terrace restaurant. And it's recently been purchased. It's been purchased by a member of this administration who's developing it and wants to put 24 condos there. And they're asking for several variances. And we didn't know anything about it until the day before the zoning board meeting. And then there was a media response from the community. We show up to the zoning board meeting, and of course it's continued, because that's the parliamentary rope-a-dope I've talked to you guys about before, is if no one's there to fight it, they'll go through. But if there's people there to fight it, they pull it out and they kick it off. This time they kick it off past the election, which I don't think is a coincidence. But the people don't want that kind of development in Ward 1. I imagine a lot of the other wards feel similarly. But like the state and the city spent all that time and money fixing Quincy Shore Drive and C Street so that the traffic flows better. And now you're going to add 40 something more cars right off of it that are going to be turning right, left, whichever way, and probably undo a lot of the improvement of that intersection. So, not to mention there's not enough parking for some people's tastes, and there's a residential community right across the street where they're worried cars are going to be parking for overnight.
What about the Maritime Center?
Where is the Maritime Center? That's a good question. We don't know what's going on with the Maritime Center. The ward councilor hasn't really had any meetings to update us on it. We're told it's back in the planning phase, but that was an issue when I first ran in 2017, and it has not moved since that. We're concerned that with the mayor's new project off of 3A, the behind the CVS, that what if is the plan to move the Maritime Center over there and not put one in House Neck? Because they tore down our Maritime Center without a plan to replace it. It was being used up until the day they closed it. Girl Scout meetings, Boy Scout meetings, people were using it, and I think the Marine unit was using it up until they closed it. So they had no plan. They just raised it with the Z, not,
Right.
and now we're worried about what's going to happen to the House Neck Community Center. Where are they going to end up? Because Mannett Health wants to eventually take over that space.
So does it need to be changes in zoning, do you think, to prevent these developments from taking over residential neighborhoods?
I think we just need to build in with the zoning we have.
Okay.
Okay. There are zoning laws. The zoning laws for that spot, if we're going back to 105C Street,
Right.
would allow for a much more manageable sized unit. That would be a start.
Because there was a restaurant there.
There
with
was a
cars
restaurant
going
there.
in and out, right?
And with that, the zoning that's there now, we could put something mixed use in. There could be a restaurant with condos above it.
Okay.
So we would like to see something like that. Right now, Ward 1 is hemorrhaging restaurants. Thank goodness Off the Hook came back from what was once Louis, now is Off the Hook. But Grumpy's and the Imperial Terrace shut down over COVID. And from what I understand, Grumpy's is going to become some kind of residential complex as well. I mean, that's the rumor. Again, we haven't had any meetings about it.
Now, is the Imperial Terrace close to the public safety, what will be the public
Yeah,
safety
it's
headquarters?
one spot closer than the Fox and Hound. It's right next to the Naval. So it's going to be within, it'll probably, the shadows will touch of those two things.
Which we should mention, the public safety headquarters isn't moving all that fast either.
No, it's not. And it's costing a lot of money. And some of, what I will say about the Ward 1 residents, they all want that to happen. They support the police. They think the police are overdue for upgraded facilities. What they don't want is it to be like a Taj Mahal. They don't want it to be so fancy. Because in the end, it's a working police station. It doesn't have to be some sort of art museum,
All right. Joe,
What else
thanks
can
for
we
coming
talk
in.
about?
Appreciate it.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I'm afraid that's the time we have for this evening.
right,
But I
thanks,
know
guys.
you'll still be active in Ward
Oh, yeah,
1.
you'll find me.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us.
Sure.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Joe Murphy, candidate for Ward 1 City Council. Our live coverage here on Quincy Access Television. Quincy Votes 2021. I believe we have some preliminary numbers to provide for you this evening.
Yes, those will be coming up, and folks, you can read them on the screen as we read them, and I'm told just a couple minutes away from that. But again, no shortage of mentioning this to the folks, to you out there, of course my co-host as well, that we rely heavily on our members, our volunteers, that are at the polls and doing a great job getting us the numbers, and that's how we can deliver this program here to you tonight. And Joe, let me turn it over to you. Numbers are ready, and then we'll introduce our guest.
Yes, quite appropriately, we'll start with the numbers in Ward 1. As we do have the incumbent Ward 1 councilor coming up next with Dave McCarthy, but first we'll show you, and this is with unofficial results, 4 of 5 precincts coming in now, and the incumbent Dave McCarthy at 1,245 votes, and challenger Joe Murphy at 800 votes. And again, that is unofficial, but 4 of 5 precincts reporting. Apparently there's a problem with a printer that we're trying to get the results from Ward 1 to come up, but the last precinct is still undecided here, not at the polls. Ward 5, there is a race this evening as well, and you can see the incumbent Charles Phelan right now is trailing challenger Stephen Christo, 89 votes to Mr. Christo's 128. That is just 1 of 5 precincts being reported so far. We'll head over to Ward 2, and Anthony Andronico, the sitting councilor with 115 votes, challenger Steve Perdios at 70. Again, that's just 1 of 5 precincts unofficially coming in force this evening. The at-large councilors this evening, and we have incumbents Noel DeBona, 3,294. Nina Liang, the City Council President, at 2,837. Ann Mahoney, 3,490. And challenger William Burke at 1,146. And that's 13 of 31 precincts. Also, 13 of 31 precincts so far for the school committee. There are 3 seats up for grabs this evening, and results right now, incumbent Doug Gutrow, 1,775. Emily Lebo, another incumbent, 2,279. Incumbent Courtney Perdios at 1,790. Challenger Tina Cahill right now is leading that race, 2,058 votes. Liberty Schaff at 1,774. And then Liz Speakman at 1,422. And 13 of 31 precincts reporting right now. So that's the numbers that we have for you so far. We, of course, will continue to update them throughout the evening.
And as we promised, we have another guest who joined us in studio. It's Dave McCarthy, candidate for re-election to the Ward 1 seat. So Dave, welcome.
Thanks, Mark. Joe, always a pleasure.
Yeah, we almost lost you there in the chair.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming in.
Crashed right into the studio.
Yes. Did you want to respond to any of your challengers' comments?
Yeah, I think a lot of his comments, they get exaggerated real quick. I heard a little bit out there of, the Maritime Center. The Maritime Center was Hurley's boat rental at one time. It's a cement block building that had the Maritime Police in there, the police unit pretty much. They did some safety training in there for boating and some other events, but it was a pretty dreary building. There was not a sad face or any opposition when the Maritime Center came down. There's always talk they didn't have any plans. There were plans laid out by Councilor Forrest at that time, and things were ready to get going when we hit 2018, and we had a little seawall issue. So I hear that, and I just kind of brush it aside because the Maritime Center is still to be slated at the end of Howe's Neck. We still have to deal with one other house down there, and we will probably move forward quickly with that, hopefully, and put up a nice center down there for the folks. But it always sounds like there was a big center, a big, beautiful center that we had there that we got rid of. And it was a pretty dreary cement block building that didn't really serve the community the way it should have, the way this will. So it disappoints me a little bit. There's a lot of exaggeration that comes out of the camp with Joe and his friends, and we've got a lot done down there.
What about the? I'm sorry to interrupt, but what about the parcel that was the Imperial Terrace?
Yeah, so we had a meeting like anybody else. If you two gentlemen were buying a piece of property and they came in front of zoning or planning, however that pans out in regards to what their requirements are, and it was zoning in this case first, they'll still have to go through a planning site review. They came in with their first, I'll call it the first inning of the game, and presented 4 stories, 24-unit condo in a very, very tough location at the Imperial Terrace, as we all know. I think if anything gets placed there, if these buildings don't get placed there, these units, and something else gets placed there, because something eventually will go in that lot, it's a tough lot no matter what you put there. C Street is very fast, and that was a tough turn and a tough exit when we had the Imperial Terrace Chinese restaurant there. So they're going back to the drawing board. I know that I'll probably see something soon that's hopefully reduced in size, that's set back, that the design's changed. It still might not work. There are a lot of moving parts, but it's just the beginning. If we were 6, 7 meetings deep, I'd say, yeah, we need to do something about this. But really, it's just begun. So I try to put the neighbors at ease. We had a great community meeting, about 25 people, and mostly up in that area. There's no conspiracy routine going. We will show everything to everybody.
And just talk, in general, about zoning issues within your ward.
Well, Ward 1's a little different than some of the other wards. I think I have the luxury of not having as many issues in regards to Business B or Business A or 6-story buildings or whatever. really hover around Residence B, Business A, which is 3 stories. So take the Imperial Terrace, that's Residence B. If they were to put Residence up there, 3 stories. That whole corridor of C Street that runs from the police station down through Adams Shore, the supermarket, and those areas in Adams Shore, and then also goes down into Howe's Neck beyond the Willows down in the fire station area. There's pockets of areas that I was concerned of way back when we had the Louis discussion with the parking lot down there. We wanted to make sure that whatever went on that lot was reasonable and not monstrous to the neighborhood. But there are pockets all the way up. I'm trying to look at those pockets, and I've had meetings with the administration, and there's an ordinance that's still in there that needs some more work. I haven't acted on it because I want to see if I can broaden it all the way up to the top of my ward, which would be up in this area, to try to put some restraints when someone changes from a business like the Imperial Terrace to a residence, that we can control it. I don't want to take a lifelong dream of at some point I'm going to develop this lot, it's my retirement money, and have someone who owns it get themselves all worked up that we're going to change it to Residence A and you can only put a single family home there now. That's not my purpose. I want to just try to keep the developers under control. And there are pockets on C Street that are concerning. Grumpy White's is another one. If that doesn't become a restaurant again, which I don't think it is, you're going to have the same type of movement that is going on, and that's Res B, and that's 3 stories.
That is the future of development, right? Is residents and
yeah, and you don't want it. I was always, like I said, Ward 1 is 98% Res A, really, if you look at it. There are areas where there are, multifamilies, but they were there long before the zoning laws got tightened up. And I don't think we need anything else. As you go down C Street on the other side of the Fox and Hounds, you've got the Simons apartments. They're 5 stories. On the other side of Our Lady of Good Counsel, there's a 5-story apartment building. It all kind of snuck in there and all kind of happened back before, we tightened everything up. And that was years ago when they tightened things up.
Sure. Always a pleasure, Dave.
No, thanks, guys. I'm looking forward to a couple more years of getting a lot of things done in Ward 1.
And visits to QATV.
Yes, plenty of visits to QATV.
We'd love to have
Thank
you.
you, Doug.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dave.
Good night.
Night.
Dave McCarthy, the Ward 1 City Councilor here in Quincy, and we are told that there's, a problem at the polls at the Marymount School. So Ward 1, Precinct 1, the polls not giving the total results, so we're unable to bring you those. Also in Ward 2, Precinct 2 at the Clifford Marshall School, an issue at the polls, Ward 2, Precinct 3A. So they're trying to work through those. In the meantime, we are working through our guests, and there's no problem with them whatsoever, including our next one, the president of the Quincy City Councilor at Large, Councilor Nina Liang.
Hi.
Welcome.
Happy Election Day.
The tradition continues, right, Nina?
It continues. four times running.
Thanks for coming in this evening.
Thanks for having us.
Sure. How was campaigning?
It was, honestly, it was great. It's always a good opportunity to get out and connect with folks. This year in particular, I think the switch up for me, right from the first couple of times doing it to now, is that going out this time around meant very short conversations, but the long conversations were actually the helpful ones, right? Those were the ones where you get an opportunity to see somebody at the doors who you actually know, who you've spent time talking to over the last few years. And when you're in front of them, they say, hey, while I've got you, there's this tree over here that I've been meaning to call about. While you're here, do you mind helping me look into it? I could snap a photo, I could send it over to the department head, and we try to see where is this in the roster of getting fixed, right? So that was the best part of it, honestly, this time around.
We just spoke to Councilor Dave McCarthy. We were talking about zoning. So let's talk about a comprehensive zoning review, something that you're interested in.
Yes, so this is something I've been really excited about for quite some time. I think it's accumulation of a lot of different things that I've heard from residents about, right? Over the years, we've heard concerns about traffic. And whenever I talk about traffic, it's a number of things, right? It's congestion, pedestrian safety, bike lanes, right? All of that, access to public transportation, reliable public transportation. We talk about just making sure that we're developing in certain areas to make sure that we're, doing it in a smart way that's intentional about where we're putting in density, right? We have a lot of density that's happening here in the city, and that's not the worst part about it. The worst part is when folks are like, well, it's happening in areas that are, neighborhoods, right, with really narrow streets, and you have more cars right now parked on both sides. People can't get out of the driveways, and so doing a comprehensive zoning review, I think, answers a lot of these questions about what are we doing to make sure that we're mitigating a lot of these problems that are happening. Doing a comprehensive zoning review allows us the opportunity to develop smart, right? To say that we're being intentional about placing density in areas that have access to public transportation, right? And hopefully, eliminating the need to have a car. Now, if you build a lot of density in neighborhoods that don't have access to reliable public transportation, you're gonna need a car to get around, right? And so I think that's something we have to be really thoughtful about, and unless we do an entire citywide review, we're doing it piecemeal, and piecemeal isn't going to work. So again, it's something I'm really excited about. I think it's going to help answer a lot of these concerns that have been happening right now across the city.
I'm sure something else you hear all the time from folks is, we have all this development going on. Why aren't my taxes going down?
Yes, and I'm a dog on a bone with that. I've been, as you know, talking to you folks for years about this, and I just want to give a quick shout out to the assessor's office, because I have learned so much from Colleen and the team at the assessor's office, right? It just, they know this stuff inside and out, and so having this conversation about our taxes starts at the assessor's office, understanding how this process works. And unfortunately, we don't have a solution yet, and the reason is because, if you look at the pool of money, that tax dollars contribute to, right, that keeps the city functioning, right? It keeps all the departments functioning, it gets that tree cut down, right? And so if we take advantage of this state law that allows you to take up to 35% off the value of your home, well, where's that money going to come from then, right? And so let's say the three of us took advantage of that, right? And it's, the taxes that we're paying are significantly less than what we were paying before. Great for us, but then again, when it comes to the budget and having to pay for all these city, services, where's that money going to come from? And right now, the bulk of those tax dollars come from residents, not commercial. We don't have that commercial base yet, right? Boston, Somerville, Provincetown, they have this exemption because they have another pool of funding from commercial, from rental properties, right? And here in Quincy, we don't. 85% of our city's budget comes from us, the homeowners, right? And so, it's about getting creative. What can we do, right? Of course, we can expand the commercial tax base to offset it, but that takes time, right? We need to build it. We need to make sure that we're actually bringing in businesses, big businesses, right? I'm not talking a small square foot restaurant, right, from the restaurant industry. I'm talking large scale commercial properties that can really give us that benefit as residents, right? That takes a long time. So what can we do in the immediate term? Let's find a solution to find funding elsewhere, right? We need to get creative. And again, the assessor's office has been amazing. I've sat down with them many times over the last few years, look at the numbers every single year and say, what's our commercial base look like this year, right? Is it going up? Is it improving? And so that's something we need to keep going on about, is making sure that we're bringing other people into the conversation, people who know this stuff inside and out, and just say, what can we do to find a creative solution here? Somebody somewhere out there has an answer, right? And so even if it starts with 0.5% of a tax exemption for residents who live in the home that they own, 0.5% is better than zero, right? And it's a starting point for us. So again, I don't mean to go on and on about it, but it is, I'm a dog on a bone about it, and I think that the answer's out there somewhere. We need to work together, get creative, and try, right? Try something so that we can try to make this work.
Yeah, and there are some existing programs already that maybe need to be promoted, abatements, ways to offset or delay tax payments if you're in a financial struggle. So maybe a combination of education about those programs plus some new programs.
Exactly, yeah, we have, these kinds of opportunities for veterans, right, for seniors, and even knocking on doors this year, right, talking to folks and saying, oh, I didn't realize, as a someone who identifies as a senior resident, that I can take advantage of this opportunity here in this city, right? So boom, call the assessor's office, and they now have this exemption, right? So again, you're absolutely right. It's about education about current programs, but it's still in tandem getting creative for new solutions too.
Okay. Who's going to be next council president?
I don't know. Polls haven't closed yet, right? I always like to wait until polls are closed and numbers are final, and if I'm 100% definitely in again, then we can have that conversation. But no, I like to always wait until final numbers come in for sure.
Fair enough.
Well, thank you for joining us. This has been a great evening. Thank you every time you join us here on set. It makes it a better show.
No, thank you. Thank
Keeping
you
up
for
the
saying
tradition.
that. Thank you so much again for doing this. And I want to give a quick shout out to all the volunteers, not just mine, but of course, specifically mine, but every volunteer that was out there today, either, holding signs or just getting out running coffee to folks. They really made today's election, I think, what it is, right? I think a lot of people didn't know or maybe forgot, and those volunteers were out there in the cold, and I think that really helped today. So just a quick shout out and thank you to all of them.
Always important to say thank you. Great. Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Well said.
You're welcome. Quincy Councilor at Large Nina Liang, and we have numbers to bring for you this evening here in Quincy as the city votes in 3 ward races, also for Councilor at Large, and 3 school committee races. We'll begin at the beginning.
It's a good place to start.
Good place to start with Ward 1 and 4 of 5 precincts. Incumbent Dave McCarthy, 1,245, and challenger Joe Murphy with 800 votes.
And we should mention that there is still an issue with a voting machine in Ward 1, correct?
Yes, there's a problem at the Marymount School. The machine is not giving out the total results, unfortunately, so we don't have the full precinct report there. There is also a race for Ward 2, and the sitting councilor Anthony Andronico now at 446 votes, and challenger Steve Perdios at 311. That's pretty close, and 4 of 5 precincts reporting. Again, these are unofficial results so far. We'll move on now to Ward 5, and incumbent Charles Phelan, 907, and Stephen Christo at 607, 4 of 5 precincts reporting there unofficially. The councilor at large race coming in now, and we have incumbent Noel DeBona, 6,361, Nina Liang, who we just chatted with, 5,542, and Mahoney at 6,211, and challenger William Burke at 2,227. That's 25 of 31 precincts reporting so far. And there are 3 school committee seats up for grabs this evening as well. And incumbent Doug Gutrow at 3,657. Incumbent Emily Lebo, 4,339. Sitting also in the school committee right now, Courtney Perdios at 3,584. Challenger Tina Cahill, 3,797. Liberty Schaff, 3,208, and Liz Speakman, 2,732. That is 25 of 31 precincts reporting. Again, there are 3 seats up for grabs for the school committee this evening.
Well, we have another guest with us, a challenger in the at-large race. William Burke has come on by to say hello and to chat about the city and this race. Mr. Burke,
Hi,
thanks for joining us.
thank you for having me.
Nice to see you, Bill. Thanks for coming over again.
Good to see you, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for utilizing our services here at QATV to get your message out to the city as well.
Again, thank you for having me.
Sure.
I appreciate being here.
How did it go? during
And I'd
the
like to
campaign?
see, well, I'm looking at the numbers,
Yeah,
and
what do you think?
as the city knows, I didn't put the greatest effort into this race.
And you were public about that. You didn't make any bones about it.
I don't lie to the people.
Yeah, yeah.
I tell them the truth. That's why I'm here. I want to tell everybody the truth, and I want to work for the people. But this is kind of like a feeler to see what can happen. I think the city has a little bit of a taste for me, and I know those 3 powerhouses that I was running against. There's no way anybody can beat them. But we have to show up, and we have to see what's going to happen. You know what I mean? I mean, especially if I can get a good number of votes, if I tried harder and I got 3,000 votes, the agenda that I'm trying to push might have got some more play in the upcoming with the politicians who are getting in. You know what I mean? It's basically, slow down the spending, do something about property tax, kick back the people a little bit, and pave the roads and things like that. The basic stuff that people are looking for.
The nuts and bolts of local politics.
That's it. I mean, I heard it on the trail throughout the whole time, stop the spending, fix my street, and the basic things. And that's all I'm interested in.
And of course, you're a business owner, so
Yes.
fiscal responsibility is
I live
right up your alley.
We all feel like that, though. We all have bills. We're all afraid if we're going to have enough money for our retirement. We're all afraid if we're going to have enough money next year. Who knows if we lose a job? That's why we like to have savings, as we were taught when we were younger. I mean, my grandmother used to use a tea bag twice. And she wasn't poor, but she used it twice.
Yeah. Give an example of where you think spending has been inappropriate.
All right. Well, I hate to talk. I love Tom Koch. He's a great guy. I think he's an excellent manager. I think he just spends a little bit too much money, and I can say that because I think it's true. You know what I mean? I didn't think he had to go after that Monroe building. and use it for the college. I listen to Ann. I think she's right on top of that, Ann Mahoney. I think she's right on top of that, and that's what I said to the folks around there too. We don't want to take on the dead weight of that college, even though it's been very nice for a lot of people, and I hear only 20% of the folks are using it. So if we can get it onto the state, under state control, what's wrong with that? We can take all that payroll off our back and reduce that bill, you know?
The mayor said
And
you-
I talked to the folks in City Hall. They said they don't need any more room. So why are we buying the building?
the mayor's concerned
That's
that
$100 million. How many streets can you do for $100 million? I don't know how much a street cost.
well, the building was only 15 million.
Well, they're going to renovate it too and build up, and you know this great elaborate thing, and you don't know where it's going to end. But that building isn't going to stay the same. I heard $100 million. You know,
Okay.
that's just one of the things that people see that the money getting thrown at around town. You know what I mean? And also, they're very upset that they didn't get any money on the promise of all this development. We could have cut back the people's taxes, property taxes, on all these new apartments. You guys know how many new apartments came up on the city rolls. What was it, like 5,000 or something like that?
Well, I have to ask you about, speaking of residences, Hospital Hill and the property that once was Quincy Hospital.
Yeah, I know, that's too bad. Everybody hates that.
That's
They're gonna try to be doing some other little hospital thing over there by the General's Bridge.
Correct.
It doesn't sound like it's gonna be a full effort though.
So will you?
The people want beds, and they want an emergency room, and they want to be their life saved when they have a heart attack. I had a heart attack and got taken to Quincy Medical. And they saved my life. It
Will
means
you-
a lot.
This is, I think, the third time you've run for elective office?
Yes, I ran against Steve Lynch a couple of years ago.
Right.
That was fun. Steve's a nice guy. I got 30-something percent of the vote. I was surprised. But I hustled a lot during that campaign. Steve's a nice guy, but again, there was no alternative. It was just Steve Lynch, and I'm sitting around the Republican committee in the city and say, who's going to run against this guy? Oh, nobody, it's Steve Lynch. I was like, so what? Who cares what he is? Spend $10,000 or something like that. Let's you know, put up a fight against the guy. You know,
So-
if there's no opposition in government, government goes crazy.
So keep the democratic process alive
Exactly.
and incumbents challenged.
Yes.
So will you run again?
I'll be back.
Okay.
I'll be back. This was encouraging, and I want to thank everybody who voted for me today. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I've learned, and I will be back, and I will do better, and I will work harder.
Bill, a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good to see
Appreciate it. Good
Thank
to
you very
talk to
much.
Okay.
That's Bill Burke, a candidate for at-large city councilor here in the city of Quincy. As we continue our live election night coverage here at Quincy Access Television with our volunteers out at the polls, phoning in numbers, volunteers here at the studio tabulating them, and volunteers also putting them up for you to see as well, Mark. We're just kind of the figureheads. Everything is happening behind the scenes.
Absolutely. There are a lot of folks behind the scenes that make programs like this happen, so we certainly thank them. Unpaid, I should
That's
I
right.
should mention.
Volunteers.
Absolutely. Well, joining us again, a guest, we have Ward 5, the incumbent Ward 5 City Councilor Chuck Phelan. He has just grabbed onto the chair, and Chuck, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
How do you feel tonight?
I feel very good.
You got your City of Quincy tie on, so you
Oh yeah, I mean, too bad there's no more Abigail's Crossing. These were
right.
great ties. Everyone commented on today, but yeah, this is actually my dad's tie, so I wanted to wear it in memory of him. And he was when I first ran, he was the one who helped me the most when I ran. So
Nice.
I felt it was a nice piece to wear it in honor of him.
One of the things I do want to bring up, we chatted about this not too long ago, was Wollaston Center and what folks should expect down in that area.
Well, I think you're going to see an overlay district coming in. It's going to be coming in from the planning department, and of course, I have a conflict because I do own property, but there will be meetings and everything coming up. There's also going to be the people who own the place between Cushing and Chapman will be coming in, and there will be a neighborhood meeting because although I can't vote on it, I can facilitate the neighborhood meeting so everyone is filled in on exactly what they're looking to do. before they actually file with the planning board and everything. But there will be a couple of projects coming in, probably in November and some even in January. So we'll start to pick up, and there'll start to be a lot of activity.
What do you think about the discussion we've had this evening about zoning, recodification in the city to better, smarter develop, I suppose?
I think it's not a it's a good idea,
Okay.
but I think a lot of the things have to do with enforcing the current laws. I mean, I think sometimes people immediately go for a variance on things, and sometimes they think that's an easier way. I do think that you need to look at zoning districts. I think it's not the zoning laws, it's the zoning map. Because if you look at the map, there are industrial areas that are now residential. There are business areas that are now residential. And there's an overlapping of these districts, which were great 50 years ago but don't work today. So I think as much as changing the zoning code, it's changing the map, which is a lot different than changing the code, believe it or not. I think a lot of the developments that come in where there's a lot of controversy and stuff have to do because they're doing it in a certain zone, but that's not what fits in that zone. The housing is already there, the places are already there, and that's where you have a lot of your conflicts. I mean,
Can you give an example, Chuck, that somebody might be familiar with, like in Ward 5?
well, you
perhaps?
get down around Spear Street,
Yep.
you get down in those areas. There's some multifamily, and then, but yet they have an old designation of a business C zone
Okay.
where there's not real, and then it crosses over to business to resident, and it's a residential area. It hasn't been a business area in a long time.
Okay.
So there's a lot of that as you go through. You go down to Old Colony, which is down. That's Industrial B, because of steel fabrication plants. There were several other things that are not there anymore. Sometimes even places where there's condos now, because at one time there's Tweeville Delivery Factory and United Lighting, which are years and years ago, but it's still listed as
Zoned
an
as that.
industrial area.
Okay.
And they're not. And a lot of the changes have occurred, and I don't think sometimes if you look at the map, they haven't caught up with.
I see.
So I think when you talk about zoning changes and rechanging and recodifying the laws, I think the last time they did it, they didn't update the map, and that was a mistake, I think,
Okay.
just from looking at it from. So it's great to change the laws, but a lot of times enforce the laws you got on parking, on density, and sometimes those aren't enforced. And I think
Whose job is it to do that?
well, that's really comes down to the planning and zoning board.
Okay.
And a lot of it is getting neighborhood meetings and coming up and having people talk and say, you know, and participate in it.
Talk about, I know that, traffic flow is a concern for every ward councilor. Talk about it, I suppose, specifically in your ward.
Yeah, I mean, traffic is, I think we need to do more for helping out neighborhoods and more not being afraid to look at some solutions. Immediately people say, oh, that's not a good solution. But if it's putting raised crosswalks in, if it's putting, sometimes those flashing signs are good. But unless there's enforcement with it, sometimes it's not as effective. But I think those are good starts, and you get the data, and you know what, if people are over speeding and stuff like that. And you know, there is no question the city's population has gone up. The census has told us it's gone up dramatically.
Over 9,000 people
yeah,
in the past 10 years.
Yeah, it's over, yeah. It's a lot of people, a lot of cars. You can see it from the excise tax. There's a lot more cars. And you know, Quincy has been successful, so there is more traffic. So I think with traffic flows, you got to do smarter traffic. You got to work on getting all your intersections where they're actually computerized and it's adjusting. I think sometimes we still have a lot of old signals out there that are not, that somebody has to go down and literally turn a key and change the timing, which I think is antiquated now. I think you also have to look at protecting the neighborhoods. I know I've tried several times with traffic signs and stuff like that to put do not enter at certain hours because they become cut-throughs. Recently we put a thing in on commercial traffic on Furnace Brook Parkway, Quincy Shore Drive, because what happens is these trucks that were never meant to be on these roads cut through these neighborhoods, and you'll get tractor trailers stuck in the middle of a street. and there's speeding and a lot of that. So I think you got to really take a hard look at a lot of these places and realize that some of our roads are antiquated for the traffic that's coming in. But you have to also be willing to look at different things from a traffic standpoint that you have to do. And some of them, might include not like a speed bump, but almost a raised
A hump.
or something along that, like they did in Quincy Square, right by City Hall. I think is a great thing. And there's also putting the speed signs up has been helpful, but I think there's also a lot more we can do.
What does the future of the former Beachcomber property hold, Chuck?
Well, that I'm very excited on.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a great passive park that we're going to be putting in. And, it was one of the first things they did when I came. It was the day I was inaugurated. And I remember it well. And they had a development slated there. And I talked with all the people from DEP, from the Coastal Zone Management, and they were all like, they're never going to give them the permit. And so I went to the mayor and I said, let's look. Is there a way we can look at? And the good news is we were able to work with the neighbors, work with the people. We had a neighborhood meeting there just in August, and we were able to put together a plan that right now we're getting the permits for, because it's still coastal zone.
Right.
So even to do the grading and everything we're going to do, we need to be able to. We still need to get permits to do it. So hopefully by this spring, we'll be cutting ground. We'll be leveling the place off, putting in some plantings, putting a little trail going through it, a couple of benches. We don't want to overdo it. We want people to enjoy the space, and we're also going to do it so it helps with the flooding down in that area.
Yes.
So there's flooding, there's environmental, there's a lot of great things that is going to come out of this. And I think one of the things we would like to do is put some interpretive signs about Wollaston Beach, and also give a little history of the Beachcomber, because for generations it was a pretty big part of Quincy.
Some big names
And
appeared there.
the McGettricks did a great job down there, and we want to recognize some of their contributions. And they were always very generous in their time, giving a lot of charity. So we want to take that, but we want to have a passive park. We want to have an open park so people can see in. They got the view. I mean, we have some of the greatest. Like Wollaston Beach is a wonderful resource to the people in the city. And anytime you can get open space, I think to preserve it enhances that space even more. And I think it's a great thing. It's great. And I was very happy that all the dominoes fell together, so it was nice.
Looks like the dominoes fell together for you this evening as well. 907 votes to your challenger, 607 votes. So 2 more years.
Well, I think there's one more precinct.
One more
to go.
precinct, yes.
But I feel good. I mean, we did a lot of work. I congratulate my opponent. He worked hard too, and but we also did a lot of work. And I think going around today, I got a great response throughout the ward. I got a great response. All the campaigning over the last 3 months. My voice is going right now. I'm about to lose it.
Yes.
But yeah, I thank all my supporters, because I'm only as good as the people helping me out. And I thank my family. My family was very active, and they took a great role. And I remember the days when my father was my campaign manager and everything. And I got a lot of great friends, and they all wanted me to continue to serve people. So I've always been humbled the night of an election, because people think enough of you to say, we want you to lead us again. And so I feel very good about that. And I've always put myself at the mercy of the voters. So I'm like, so whenever you have this, it's great, because it's an honor to be elected. I look at it as being a great honor to serve on the city council, and I work very hard, and I try to make sure that Ward 5 has a strong voice in the city, and that we're getting the services that everyone else should get the same services, and I make sure that we're getting our share of all the services.
Well, Chuck, I want to thank you for joining us here tonight. And
Well, thank you so much.
you're, of course, welcome back at any time.
Oh yeah, no, always a great thing, great coverage.
Thanks, Chuck.
Always
Appreciate
enjoy
it.
coming here.
All right, we'll let you
Thank you.
get your voice in recovery.
Yeah, I got to get some water before I go to the neighborhood club. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ward 5 Councilor Chuck Phelan here on Quincy Access Television, and I believe we have some numbers to bring to you this evening to let you know how the results are coming in across the city, and we'll start with the race for the Ward 1 City Council seat. And incumbent Dave McCarthy now at 1,493. Challenger Joe Murphy, 931. 5 of 5 precincts coming in for the Ward 1 race. In Ward 2, and Anthony Andronico, the sitting councilor, 851. Challenger Steve Perdios, 554. That's 6 of 6 precincts unofficially. And as we just saw in Ward 5, Charles Phelan, the incumbent, 907. Stephen Christo, 607. Still waiting for 1 precinct. That's 4 of 5 being reported so far. There are races for the 3 at-large council seats this evening. We'll start with incumbent Noel DeBona, 7,363 votes. Incumbent Nina Liang, 6,374. Incumbent Ann Mahoney, 6,914. Then challenger William Burke, 2,521. And I'm still waiting for 1 more precinct to come in that race as well. That's 30 of 31. Also 30 of 31 precincts reporting, and 3 school committee seats that are up for grabs this evening. And we start with Doug Gutrow, 4,181 votes. Emily Lebo, 4,984 votes. So right now she is topping the ticket there in the school committee race. Courtney Perdios, 4,159 votes. Challenger Tina Cahill, 4,460 votes. Challenger Liberty Schaff, 3,664. And challenger Liz Speakman, 3,165. 30 of 31 precincts. Interesting in the school committee race this evening. We'll keep a very close eye on that, certainly.
And again, joining us as a guest is a candidate for re-election for at-large, and that's Ann Mahoney. Ann, welcome. You are number 2 as we look at the stats coming in.
We are, and we're very, very happy to be in number 2 position. So thank you very much for having us here tonight. It has been an interesting campaign.
How so?
It was just, the differences with COVID, just having to be careful about how we're going about, talking to people. And it wasn't challenging in that way, but it was just being respectful about the way we're approaching talking to people, and basically it was all I was all out there knocking doors and talking to people. I chose not to do a mailer this time because it was mostly the 3 of us that were running. So I just felt like it wasn't fiscally prudent for us to in the campaign to do that. So we chose not to do that. So we just did it all by word of mouth, knocking on doors, and basically socializing with everybody to make sure to get out the vote. The concern, of course, it didn't seem like it was a great turnout, but it's just a hard thing when it's when there's really there's no mayor's race. Really, it makes a big difference. That's what really brings people out, I guess, in the city, and that's discouraging because I know that the school committee was a big race as far as I was concerned. It's showing with the numbers that they're coming in. But we were very happy in the campaign. I want to thank all the people who helped us. There was a lot of people that were holding signs and, just helping me just challenging to get the people to come out and vote. And, so I have a lot of thanks for everybody. Thanks to my mom and dad at home because they were helping too. In their own special way.
We talked, and we have talked about Quincy College with other folks here this evening. Talk about that, and of course I know where you stand, but talk about that in relation to COVID, in relation to COVID relief funds.
As far as what I feel about that? Yeah, I just think it's a really bad choice of how to use our COVID relief funds. It's not really what I think, if you really do the letter of the rules of what they're saying, it really wasn't about land acquisitions. It was really about, basically bringing the city back to an economic, get the engine going for the economic engine for the city of Quincy, premium paid for people who worked in the city. And there were other, like sewer, water lines, streets, but there was nowhere that it said that acquisitions of properties were really what they were anticipating those monies being used for. So I think it's the most inappropriate use I've ever seen. And you can stretch it if you want to, but it's just, it's very crystal clear to very many people in the city of Quincy. It was something that was brought up at every single door that I went to. And people are just not happy with that. And quite honestly, they're perfectly content with Quincy College being here in the city of Quincy. They applaud that. They would like it to be part of the state system. It's not something that Quincy, the city of Quincy taxpayers should be taking on at this point anymore. And that was resolved across the city. Everywhere I went, that's what people talked to me about.
Right, you mentioned the state community college system. What is that exactly?
Yeah, that's where there's other community colleges, and they're all tied into the state community college system, and it's run through the state. So rather than being run by the city of Quincy, the only municipality college that's left in the country, this would be run with the other colleges in the state system.
The last one in the country?
Last one in the country.
Really?
So the concern is what happens with the employees of Quincy College who are now city employees.
That would be something that we could work out with the state. I'm sure where there's always where there's a will, there's a way. You can make these things work. So, you know, right now, currently, yes, they are part of the city of Quincy. But when you work with the state, when you work with anything, as we talk about working with our partners, you find a way to make sure that you can continue to have it whole, so that the students and the people who work at Quincy College continue to have a place to call home, a financially stable one.
Talk about, well, I didn't know who was going to go first.
Go right ahead. Yeah.
Talk about the state of the city in the sense of development that's happening, and maybe what you found as you were knocking on doors.
So development's a very interesting one. So what's really interesting to me is that people are okay with some of the development, but for the most part, they're exhausted from it, because wherever you go throughout the city, there's a lot of development that's happening. And you know, the things that were promised, like the retail and the bottom of the stores that are not being filled in, the question is, why is that not happening? You know, what we had before was an old downtown with older stores and older things that were in it. And now we have a new downtown with maybe some new restaurants, but still empty storefronts. So what was the real plan there, is what people would ask, because there's nothing for people, but they'd say, I can go to dinner, but there's nothing else I can go downtown for. So what's the economic engine that you're suggesting when you say of all this development? And then on the other side, there's small developments. They say small, but they're really, you know, they're building on extraordinarily large projects on small lots, and it's happening throughout the whole city, and it's happening, you know, in neighborhoods, and it's really frustrating people, because they're seeing the change that's happening in the communities, the thing that makes Quincy such an interesting place to live and such a strong place to live in the neighborhoods, and we're not wanting to see that anymore. So so the neighbors throughout the city, there's a lot of people who are just exhausted from the development that's happening. They're not seeing the impact that's positive to them. You know, they're always being told, you know, well, you're house rich, cash poor, because, you know, your assessed value is going up, but there's no incentive for them. So they're looking like, we've put up with all this development, so where's the end and what's the fix, and how's it going to make it better for me? So that's something that we really have to wrap our arms around. So we really do have to have a marketing plan for the city of Quincy. What is it that we're trying to attract, and how are you going about doing that? And you can't continue to build buildings and not have anything in the bottom and say that it's point the finger to somebody else, because we're allowing that to happen with our LDAs, and we're talking about doing Wollaston now. Is that going to be another place that we build giant tall buildings with nothing in the bottom? I think we have to really take a step back and decide what we want to do in the city of Quincy, and who are we doing it for? Is it for the people who live here, or is it for the developers who want to develop here?
That's a good place to leave it right now, Ann. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was great to see you. We're very excited. So thank you for everybody that came out and voted, and thank you for all the support in the city of Quincy. I do very much appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Councilor at Large Ann Mahoney joining us this evening on our live election night coverage here in Quincy Access Television. I think we have some more numbers to bring to you this evening, as our volunteers have been calling them in from the polls all around the city. And we're still missing one, but other than that, we're pretty up to date. We're in Ward 5, Precinct 3. But we'll begin with Ward 1, and 5 of 5 precincts coming in now. Dave McCarthy, the incumbent, at 1,493 votes. Challenger Joe Murphy, 931 votes. These are unofficial results so far. In Ward 2, the sitting city councilor is Anthony Andronico at 851 votes, and challenger Steve Perdios, 554 votes. That's 6 of 6 precincts. And in Ward 5, there is a race this evening. The incumbent Charles Phelan, 907 votes, and challenger Stephen Christo, 607. And again, we're still waiting for one precinct in Ward 5 to finalize that. There are 3 councilor at large seats that are up for election this evening. Incumbent Noel DeBona, 7,363 votes. Incumbent Nina Liang, 6,374. Incumbent Ann Mahoney, who we just heard from, 6,914. And challenger William Burke at 2,521. And of course, really, the most interesting race this evening is for 3 school committee seats. And the incumbent Doug Gutrow at 4,181. Incumbent Emily Lebo, 4,984. Courtney Perdios on the school committee right now, 4,159. Then we have the challengers, Tina Cahill, 4,460 votes. Challenger Liberty Schaff, 3,664, and challenger Liz Speakman, 3,165. Still waiting for one more precinct in the school committee race as well, but very interesting.
Very interesting tonight. And we are now headed toward Ward 2, and our guest is Anthony Andronico, who is the current city councilor, and the numbers are looking good. So Anthony, so Anthony, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me again. I know just last week we were chatting about the ongoings in Ward 2, and I do appreciate everyone that showed up to vote today, whether it was in support of myself or my opponent. You know, it's important that you get out there and do your civic duty to cast a ballot.
Anything different campaigning for ward councilor before you campaigned for school committee, obviously?
Yeah, I know. Just going from school committee over to the council has been an interesting transition, I think, to say the least. But the most interesting part is you're going from, you know, citywide as a school committee race and going to the ward where you're representing 1/6 of the city instead. You can really drill down and get to know your neighbors. You know, you're going 2-3 times to different people's doors, and you're getting to know them on a personal level. And I think that's really important to just foster a sense of community. And Ward 2 is a great place to live. And just making all the friendships that we've been able to over the last 6 months during the campaign has been something that I'll always remember.
I know in a previous In Your Neighborhood program, we talked about Quincy Ave and across from Cam Man. There is some development going on, residential development going on the opposite side of the street.
Yeah, I remember just from that. That was when I had first come in, and that project had already been before the planning board, and I had to send a follow-up notice. It was one of my first notices that we sent out for those, I think it was the townhouse project, and I believe the planning board did decide to move that forward. But just in general, I know within Ward 2 there are a few projects coming up that, you know, the neighborhoods are going to have to know about, whether they want to tweak the proposals that come before them. It's just important that as a ward councilor that I make sure that every resident has the opportunity to speak up, make their voice heard for all projects. And I know a big concern at the doors that I've been hearing is just, you know, development creeping into neighborhoods, and that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on moving forward.
It's been a concern that's been raised even here this evening among all the candidates, yes. And there is, as you're well aware, a proposal from the mayor to kind of look at the city's zoning and to do kind of a refresh, if you will.
Right, and I do appreciate that the administration has put that forward. I think it does show that the administration is listening, and, you know, they get plenty of phone calls and emails just as we do about these topics. And, you know, really I think moving forward, you know, not every inch of available space needs to be developed, and even when there is development, you know, it'd be great to see more green space in the developments that we do have, because I think it fosters a better sense of community.
We were talking about the Washington Street corridor and some signage that was going up there because of overcrowded streets in that area.
That's
residential
right.
Streets.
That's right, and actually, you know, I used that street, Lebanon Street, today a few different times on my way to the Forever Clubhouse, and there was no one parked on that side, and we appreciate people following those new traffic laws. But just in general, it's important, you know, when you reach out to city council and you say, hey, I'm having an issue with parking on my street. It's really narrow, especially when there are concerns about an emergency vehicle trying to get down the street.
Which there was.
Which there absolutely was, and that's why we, you know, sent a letter out to the neighborhood to get feedback. And, you know, working with Ed Grennan and the TPAL department, we came up with a plan, and we felt it was best for one side of the street parking only, and we're able to implement that change. And the feedback so far in the few weeks that it's been there has been very positive. And same thing over on Burns Ave off of Quincy Ave, similar concern.
Shipyard may be developed in the future, Anthony, and that's, of course, a big part of, probably the biggest undeveloped parcel in Ward 2. Something you're concerned about?
I'd just say in general, when it comes to, I think, a development of that particular size, there needs to be a long-term vision about what is the end result supposed to look like. That any developer that comes in, you need to have full faith and trust in that developer to follow through on a project. Quincy has seen, I think from Streetworks a decade ago, you know, came in with big promises and then went under. We've seen similar things happen with Union Point in Weymouth. That project was stalled for a few years because of development issues. So it's not something that you can take lightly, but at the same time, I think we talked about some infrastructure issues and plans. But I think before you go and invest in that type of infrastructure, you need to make sure that you're taking care of what we already have with our own roads and water and sewer improvements that we have in Ward 2 and throughout the city of Quincy.
Any concern, Anthony, regarding the Weymouth compressor station?
Yeah, I think that to put it very bluntly, yes, there are absolutely concerns with that. Just meeting with the emergency management team and Ali Sleeman a few weeks back and just going over the plans for what happens with a minor incident, a kind of medium incident, and then a major incident, and just seeing the evacuation plans that you would have to implement for the people of Quincy. I mean, there are thousands of residents, but as we've said from the beginning, 4 or 5 years ago, that this has been the wrong project in the wrong space. It's on 4 acres of land. It's in an environmental justice zone. There are thousands of people surrounded. It's on a waterway. It's next to a $200-something million bridge. There are countless reasons why that is a bad project, and I know the city of Quincy is committed to continuing the fight through the legal system.
How has your outreach been to your constituents, since you've been on the city council? How are you utilizing social media, if you will, technology to keep in touch?
Well, the phone still works, as does email, so I always get direct messages through that, but also just through the Facebook page, and I have an Instagram page, a Twitter page that we use too. But one of the things I was really proud to unroll when I first came into office was the constituent services website, anthonyandronico.com, for the folks at home, just where you can take a survey to let me know how you feel about the different issues and ongoings in Ward 2 and throughout the city. You can request assistance with an issue. You can find the phone numbers for all the various departments. You can learn about Ward 2 a little bit more, some of the points of interest and the things that make up Quincy Point, Penns Hill. So it's been something new, I think, that maybe other city councils haven't implemented before. And I always think it's important to try new things and continue to find ways to connect with your constituents online and in person.
Well, thank you, Anthony, and of course, utilizing Quincy Access Television as well.
Absolutely.
Which
just
we know
last
you do.
week.
Absolutely, and you're welcome back, of course.
I hope so. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming in this evening.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the time.
Pleasure.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night.
Ward 2 City Councilor Anthony Andronico sitting with us here this evening as our live election coverage of Quincy Votes 2021 continues.
And our parade of guests also continues this evening. Joining us currently is a candidate for re-election for at-large and doing very well with the numbers there as we took a look at those earlier. This would be Noel DeBona. So Noel, congratulations and welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark, Joe. It's good to see you guys tonight.
Great to see you in person, which is kind of nice.
It's great. It's yeah, thank you. Thanks. I want to just thank all the voters out there that came out in this election. I think the numbers have just come in. What are we at for 16% or right around there?
About 16% turnout citywide, yeah. In the councilor at large races, you have topped the ticket with 7,732 votes.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate all the voters that came out in this election and voted for me to re-election. I want to thank all my supporters that put lawn signs on their lawns. I want to thank all the supporters that held signs today and then came out and voted. And I appreciate all your support over the years and to be re-elected for the 4th term. I think it's really important to that school committee race, and being a former school committee person, 8 years ago I was doing what some of them are doing this past election. Emily Lebo, I never seen Emily work this hard in a particular election. I saw her almost everywhere and she did almost everything. Tina Cahill taking 2nd place. Tina did very, very well with her outreach and her marketing tools, and I give her a lot of credit, so the two of them. And then it came down to about 50 votes for 3rd place, I guess it is. Did the 3rd place person come in?
It will be Doug Gautreaux coming back on the school committee.
And Doug, as much as it sounds crazy, and I've run against a field of women, is he was the only male on the ballot. And he was up the top of the ballot. I think he was 1st. So being 1st on the ballot and being a male, and Doug Giffley, his experience of being 14 years on the city council and then 4 years on the school committee. So congratulations to the 3 of them. Now, don't forget the other 3 that worked very hard. Liberty Schaff, she did a great job out there. First time out citywide is very difficult. Courtney Perdios, obviously, she's a great ground gamer. She did a really good job. She served some time on the school committee. Thank you to her, all her hard work. And then Liz Speakman. Very great speaker. I saw her speak in front of folks, and she's very good. And she did a very good job with what she did. So don't hang your hat that you didn't do well. You didn't win, because I saw them all out in this particular election. So
it's certainly great just to put your hat in the ring.
Yes, and they all worked. All 6 of them went out there and attacked the city. It's huge. We're up at 101,636. That's a lot of people out there.
So you have 2 more years. What's the first thing you want to do for the next legislative session, Noel?
I think some of the biggest important things that we need to do is the rezoning. I've talked to a lot of folks across the city that live in certain areas of the city that do not want certain construction items going in their particular areas, next to their houses, anything that's on the coastline. I think we're going to be looking into working with my ward councilors. I'm not going to step any toes on my ward councilors. I got to work with them. Is to go into different sections of the city, different wards, different neighborhoods, and say, listen, we don't want these multi-units going in this particular area. This is not a great area to be put in these, especially Res A, you know, and maybe rezone in some of those areas. Sit down with some of the ward councilors and work on this. This is important legislation. As we have the downtown, that's an economic engine that we can do this type of construction and redevelopment, revitalization. But there's certain neighborhoods and single-family neighborhoods that I don't want being touched. So I think it's important for me as a counselor to step up and represent the folks of those neighborhoods. And every neighborhood and every street's going to be a little different. And we're going to have to dissect it and really attack this in the next 2 years. So I think that's one of the biggest items on there for me.
I was going to ask, what about the special education center, something that you are on board with?
Sure, I'm looking forward to that. You know, for many, many years, obviously you look at an education system in every town, city, municipality. I'm looking forward to that. I was very supportive of it. Trying to do some type of in-house program, having children in the SPED program myself, IEPs, and giving the parents the option of whether going out of district or staying here inside the new Richard DeCristofaro Center. And I'm looking forward to it. We'll have a lot. Give the parents an option. You know, can we do something in-house, or do you feel comfortable going out? And just having that option, I think, is very important, and to take care of our children. So I'm looking forward to it, and I think over the course of years, $500,000, $600,000 we're gonna actually get in return and make per year. It's gonna take some time to get back to how much it costs, but it's a step in the right direction.
Because currently, those children have to be bused out of the city.
And it's very expensive. You know, and another thing is not only is it costly, it's also putting a child on that bus for an hour and a half each way, 2 hours each way, and then child might be on there by themselves, you know. So you got to look at it 2 ways, and you got to give the parents a little bit more options to make that decision based on what they think the best is for the child, and then having the option of a school system that allows that option. So I'm looking forward to all those issues, and some of the other issues that I think are very important is infrastructure improvements. Obviously the roads and the sidewalks. We've done a lot of extensive work working with the DPW commissioner, working with my ward councilors on getting the proper streets and sidewalks paved. It's been a great $100 million, you know, it's going to be between a 4 to 6 year span where we're going to attack the city and really take care of our infrastructure improvements. Also very important is working with natural resources and the tree warden on tree plantings and making sure that we salvage some of the trees, but also get rid of the ones that are dead. For safety reasons. Look at the storms that we just had, the catastrophic situations that we just had with the winds. A lot of tree damage, a lot of power outages. We've got to have a little bit better maintenance, I guess I call, of the trees and inventory. And I know the tree warden's working on an inventory of all the trees in the city. I know it sounds crazy to be talking about trees, but do you realize that the power outages are caused by some of these trees? One of the trees in the side yard hit my garage, and luckily it wasn't any damages, but if there was a child or a person out there, it could have killed them. So public safety is key on a front stretch, and I'm looking forward to working with the different departments and having that type of relationship, working with my ward councilors and working together. Listen, 9 councilors up there, 9 different personalities, 9 different opinions, but I got to respect everybody because guess what? They were elected. You, the folks, elected the folks that are up there, and I have to respect even if I don't fully agree with some of the issues or some of the opinions that they make. And I think everybody gets that right, you know, and that goes for school committee as well, and they've earned it. Everybody's been up there now as an elected official, so I like to work with my colleagues. We don't always have to agree with everything, and we don't. We most certainly do. And we need to somehow work together with solving some of the issues in the city. But I think we've come a long way. There's still a lot of construction going on in the city, and traffic and mitigation is very important. That I think there's going to be in the next phase of things. But we all have to work together here. I got to work with my ward councils. I've got to work with the administration. But at the same token, if there's times I have to say certain things, say, listen, I don't agree with this, and I'm going to go this way on this. So it's give or take, you know. And it's an evolving city, and there's a lot going on. And I know you guys. I'm looking forward to getting in and sitting down with you guys and working on different things over the next few months. And
Absolutely.
I know it's been a crazy year with the COVID, and hopefully that simmers out with the masks and boosters and all these other things that a lot of the folks that came on here earlier talked about. But
no, it's been great.
It's been challenging. I think I'm am I the last person here tonight?
May very well be.
I always try to wait for the results. I kind of got the full results and to come in and talk.
We have numbers to show, folks.
Oh, that's great.
Yes.
Final numbers.
we could do another show all night, guys, if you want to.
We're going to start flashing the lights.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you so much for all your hard work.
We never go off the air, so I suppose we could.
Well, you two have a nice time. I'm going to bed.
It's been a long day. Yeah. It's been a long
Thank
day.
you, Noel.
Thank you so much, and thank you,
congratulations.
voters, again, and I appreciate it. Thank you to my family, my wife, and my kids, and my dad. We did a lot of hard work this time around. And for the folks out there that wanted to know how much I lost 23 pounds in this election, but walking the streets. But thank you.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll see you soon. Thanks.
I'll see you guys. Thank you.
It's a good way to stay fit.
At large, Noel DeBona, yes, indeed, and it's free too. As I mentioned, we do have final numbers to give to you, unofficial results, and we'll start in Ward 1. The incumbent Dave McCarthy at 1,493, and challenger Joe Murphy 931 votes. In the race for Ward 2, Anthony Andronico, now an elected member, 851, not appointed, and Steve Perdios at 554 votes. In the race for Ward 5, incumbent Chuck Phelan, and we do have the final results, by the way, now for Ward 5. We got that last precinct in, and Chuck ended up with 1,200 votes. Challenger Stephen Christo, respectable, 797 votes. Again, Stephen has done quite well, the second time out for this seat. We take you over to the at-large council race, and all three incumbents have been re-elected this evening. Noel DeBona, 7,732. Nina Liang, 6,720. And Ann Mahoney, 6,917. Challenger William Burke at 2,705. And finally, for school committee, the one everybody's been watching and waiting for, and there is going to be a change. Certainly, as you can see, Tina Cahill is joining the Quincy School Committee with 4,807 votes, just barely edging out Courtney Perdios by about 81 votes or so. So that was a very close one. You see Doug Gutrow edging her out at 4,439, and Emily Lebo at 5,128. Challengers Liberty Schaff, 3,802, and then Liz Speakman at 3,330. And that's, again, unofficial, but we usually do pretty well.
We usually do, and we want to thank, of course, as we had mentioned before, the number of volunteers, our members, who participated in coverage this evening. We couldn't do it. Seriously, we could not do it without their help.
There's no question. It would not happen. Just the two of us, or just the staff here alone, does not have the manpower to cover the entire city. So we want to certainly thank them.
We also have a Quincy High School intern, at least one, that has helped. And the interns, we should mention, we do work with Quincy High School during the school year, and they produce programs and public service announcements here. They've done quite well over the years. And of course, Quincy Access Television is a teaching institution, as well as the many hats that we wear. And we do have another interview that we will go to next. It is with the school committee candidate for re-election. That is Emily Lebo. So we'll look and see what she had to say. Joining us right now, Joe and I, is a candidate for re-election to the Quincy School Committee. That would be Emily Lebo. Emily, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Great to have you back. I see that you voted.
I
you
voted.
have the sticker to say so. Talk about what you experienced at the polls. As you were out today, it was a gorgeous day. So
it was
people,
a gorgeous day.
People certainly should have taken advantage
They
of that.
should have. It was a little cool this morning, but it warmed up and it got a little cool. I just left Squantum and it got a little cool there too. But it was slow. It was slow this morning, but it has picked up since 2 o'clock. So I'm hoping that we're going to double the primary before the night's over. Not a lot of races in the city, So it really holds back the crowd sometimes. But I really am grateful for the people who understand that the schools are important anyway. You know, whether you have a ward council race or not, the schools are important.
What was it like campaigning during an era of a pandemic, Emily?
It really wasn't bad because
Okay.
mostly outside, you know,
Right.
when you're knocking and walking and talking, it's not too bad because I would just step back from the doorway, had my mask with me, you know,
Okay.
and just step back so we could have a conversation. But people seem to be a little more opened up than they
Yeah.
were before. It's been a long campaign season, longer than usual,
Yeah.
because there was so much competition in the primary. So it's been a long time.
I know one of the things that you want to address or continue to address is the loss of learning during the pandemic.
Yeah, I'm really concerned. We have great assessment data on the younger kids because we have the MAP assessment. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's like a dipstick assessment we do 3 times a year, and you can see what kind of growth the kids have made. Well, subsequently, you can see if they've lost anything or not made any growth since last year. So we are getting that data, and it's proving to be true that we have had a loss of learning. And I really worry about some of the older kids because they're not getting assessed like that, you know what I mean? So I think, especially somebody who's doesn't have that much time left in school, and they think that they are okay, like say in French, advanced French, but they go off to college and they realize that they missed a year and a half. So I worry about the older kids.
Anything good come out of the past year and a half in the public schools that you can use in the future?
Absolutely.
Good.
You know, even though doing Zoom all the time is horrible, it is a great way to get parents and families' input. And we had so many surveys and forums in the school system that we got great input. So I think using that in the future and even having like remote conferences with the teachers and having the therapists be able to be remote with the parents, it has been such a blessing. It really has been a blessing. So I think it's going to stay around. And I also think the use of technology, you know, it's a curse and it's also wonderful, but I think the use of technology in education, as long as it's done well, it's going to be around for a while.
And talk about social, emotional learning and that factoring in to the curriculum.
Yeah, I'm really worried about that too. So, we've done some great things on the elementary level with social emotional learning. We have campaigns in the schools about respect and responsibility, and we push it really well, and the kids do a great job with it. When we get to middle school, we kind of drop the ball on that a little bit, and in high school it was almost non-existent. And we had lost so much in the past few years. Well, not the past few years, we've been building back, but earlier we had lost so much in the way of ancillary teachers and health educators and people like that who would pick up the ball with that. Those positions are back in play. But what I'm hoping to get out of the school system this year, and it's hard because everybody's still adjusting, so you hate to push them too much, but I really would like to see a curriculum map of where that's taught K through 12, because kids don't stop developing socially, emotionally, because they're in middle school. That's actually when they start to develop more, and they're seeing so much more things that we've never seen. We have never been exposed to.
A map within the Quincy school system?
A curriculum map, so where they're going to teach this K through 12.
Okay.
We have maps about everything else we teach, you know, what part of English language arts we teach K through 12,
Okay.
what you can expect to be learning in the 6th grade, the 9th grade, kindergarten. We have that with all of our subjects, but I think I'd like to see it in social emotional learning. The problem with it is it's taught by so many diverse people in the school. Sometimes it's guidance, sometimes it's the health educator, sometimes it's the homeroom teacher, and so it gets a little harder to identify if you're really doing it.
How important is it to have the school administration, faculty, staff as diverse as the student body in order to teach that?
It's incredibly important and almost impossible to do. I mean, I worked in Boston for a few years, and they can't do it. And they
Okay.
pay better than we can pay, you know, but they can't do it. And they lose diverse educators on a regular basis too. So it's a challenge. We have to build the pool.
Talk about community partnerships, and I guess I'm thinking of the community partnership the Quincy Public Schools has with Dove.
Yes, that's very exciting, yeah. So especially this year. Last year, for the past few years, they had been at North Quincy High School doing a fairly robust program, but they didn't have a champion at Quincy High School somebody who would make the schedule for them, tell them when they were going to meet with the kids and stuff. And so we really, both Mr. Guthrow and I really pushed for that this year, and we had Dove come in and present what they could do, and they're free. They're free. So now we have them in all 5 of the middle schools doing a great thing. They start off with healthy friendships. What makes a healthy friendship? You know, how do you get rid of somebody who's not healthy for you? How do you get yourself out of that? And then they build up to more mature and adult things when they get to the high school level. And usually around the 10th and the 11th grade, they'll start looking for peer mentors who will then promote that in the school. So I think it's going to be great having them in there. I mean, they're in, I think, 27 schools and districts in our state, and they live here, so they should have been in our schools. So I think this is going to be much more, and the health educators will help with that because then they can schedule them into their time. So what the health educators at the high school now actually have scheduled time with the kids, which they never had before. We had interventionists that, could do a campaign.
Yeah.
But if you didn't go to the campaign for some reason, you didn't get the content.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Emily. Appreciate your time.
It's always a pleasure. I really appreciate you guys.
You're very
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thanks.
Well, that was our interview with Emily Lebo, candidate for re-election, and she has been re-elected. Joe, again, a very successful evening for us here at Quincy Access Television, and I say that because our success is based on the folks that come into the studio as guests.
It's great. It's great that they utilize our service. It's great that we have so many dedicated volunteers that commit to this evening, because it is a commitment. It's a long process, certainly, to make your way around the city, get the numbers, get them back to us so we can bring them to you. And that's just what we're going to do right now, as a matter of fact. We have final numbers, unofficial results for you, and we'll begin in the race for the Ward 1 City Council seat. As you can see, the incumbent Dave McCarthy re-elected to another 2-year term, 1,493 votes, and challenger Joe Murphy at 931 votes. Ward 2, there was a race for that seat. Anthony Andronico, who was appointed to that seat earlier this year, has now been elected to a 2-year term at 851 votes. Challenger Steve Perdios, 554 votes. And there was also a race for the Ward 5 City Council seat, and incumbent Charles Phelan, 1,200 votes, and challenger Stephen Christo, 797 votes. 5 of 5 precincts there as well. In the race for the 3 at-large City Council seats, all the incumbents have been re-elected to 2-year terms. Noel DeBona, 7,732. Nina Liang, 6,720. Ann Mahoney, 6,917. And challenger William Burke, 2,705 votes. And then the all-important race for 3 school committee seats, and as we can see, Doug Gutrow will be re-elected. These are 4-year terms, by the way, to the school committee, and Doug with 4,439 votes, topping the ticket. Emily Lebo, re-elected, 5,128 votes. Courtney Perdios just edged out by Doug, 4,388 votes, and instead Tina Cahill is joining the Quincy School Committee for a 4-year term with 4,807 votes. Challengers Liberty Schaff at 3,802, and challenger Liz Speakman, 3,330 votes.
As we close here this evening, again, we want to thank our volunteers, our members, for helping us out and gathering those numbers and basically getting those numbers from the polls. Those numbers are then either delivered here by them or they're called in to our phone lines. So we've had people on the other side picking up the phone and writing those numbers down. I believe over 30 volunteers. So thank you very much for making this possible. And of course, Joe and I certainly enjoyed delivering the results and the interviews to you this evening.
As the mayor mentioned earlier this evening, it's a very active and connected city, and the constituency of the city has always been committed to local politics, and it is for that reason that we feel it's important to bring you this coverage every election, so we're happy to do it.
So for all of us here at Quincy Access Television, thank you for watching, and please continue to watch Local Access TV for more community-based programming.
News.